How does Australia, a nation of just 26 million people, consistently dominate Olympic swimming? The answer lies in cutting-edge technology and exceptional leadership. As a massive sports fan, I'm excited to dive into the fascinating world of sports technology, specifically the cutting-edge innovations that are shaping Olympic swimming. From wearables to AI-driven performance analysis, the intersection of tech and sport is revolutionizing how athletes train, compete, and achieve greatness. Joining me is someone who knows this world inside and out. Jess Corones, General Manager of Performance Support and Olympic Campaign at Swimming Australia. Jess has been at the forefront of elite swimming for over a decade, playing a pivotal role in preparing Australia's best swimmers for the global stage. From the London Olympics in 2012 to Paris in 2024, she's seen it all. Today, we'll explore how Australia is consistently punching above its weight in the pool, the role of technology in maintaining that edge, and what it takes to prepare for that one defining moment every 4 years. Plus, we'll get a look behind the scenes at life in the Olympic Village. Yes, including those famous cardboard beds. So, grab your swimming goggles and let's dive into this exciting and fascinating conversation with Jessica Corones from Swimming Australia. Hello, my name is Lucy Lin, and today we'll be unpacking the latest innovations in swimming and sports tech with our expert, Jessica Corones. So Jessica is the General Manager of Performance Support and Olympic Campaign at Swimming Australia. I am so excited to have her here. Welcome to the Emerging Tech Unpacked podcast, Jess.
Hi, Lucy. Thanks for having me today. I'm really looking forward to the chat.
Great. Well, I think you are a fascinating person. I mean, I'm a big sports fan, so this is something I'm super keen to talk to you about. But let's start from the beginning. You earned a human movement degree and you started your career as a sports scientist. Can you tell us a little bit more about what a sports scientist do, what a sports scientist does, and then what's your career pathways so far?
Yeah, I've been reflecting a little bit on this lately. We've just returned from the Paris Olympics and it's always a good time to reflect. I got a degree in human movements at the University of Sydney, and while I was there, I started an internship at the New South Wales Institute of Sport. And I worked with a number of different sports there, from athletics to triathlon, softball, hockey, and swimming as well at the time. Yeah, I guess I developed as a young sports scientist at the New South Wales Institute of Sport, worked with a number of different athletes and a lot of different coaches and different sports scientists, and was exposed to a lot of different, I guess, opportunities in high performance elite sport before I moved to Swimming Australia full time after the London Olympics at the end of 2012. And I've been at Swimming Australia ever since then. So it's coming on 13 years, I think.
Wow. That's a long service leave right there already, right?
Yeah. I've passed the test. I've got my long service leave. I've just got to find some time to take it.
Well, how do you find the time? You're the general manager of the Olympic campaign. That goes all the time. I'm sure it's a wheel that keeps turning. Every 4 years I see swimming at the Olympics, and that's probably where I'm most known swimming for. And I'm pretty sure most of the audience is about the same. And everybody loves it. I don't know anyone who doesn't love the Olympics. And it's so exciting we'll talk about Paris a little bit later. But in the 3 years and 50 weeks in between, can you give us some insights about what happens behind the scenes? You've had this career now, 13 years at swimming, but what are you involved in and what do you do behind the scenes?
Yeah, so really timely question. As you know, we've just returned from the Paris Olympics middle of last year. And so the slate's clear and we're starting again. So we're right in that period right now. So we work in 4-year Olympic cycles. So there's an Olympics every 4 years. So we're at the start of that 4-year cycle now, working towards the LA Olympics. And what my team does is works with the athletes and the coaches on a daily basis, developing their performance. So working really closely with the coaches might be monitoring or testing different training sessions, designing race plans, performance programs, and basically working with the coach on how to develop the best performance from the athlete. And obviously the ultimate goal we're working towards is LA. We're always going and using those meets to put into practice our performance, and then we'll come back and debrief how the performances went at those competitions, and then we'll set some new parameters, design new training sets and sessions and training blocks, and then we'll keep refining that process for the athletes every time, every year, every week, as we head towards LA, where we're obviously aiming to get the best performance out.
There's so much work in between by the sounds of it. And how do you, prepare yourself for this one occasion every 4 years? You could be doing so well every other day, and then there's that big me. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that mentality mindset. How do you get the best out of this one specific, occasion?
Yeah. So interestingly, the way we kind of think about it is we're trying to work backwards from LA, and all of those competitions that I just mentioned before, the World Championships, Commonwealth Games, there's local meets, we have state championships and nationals here in Australia, and we're using those meets all the time to practice. It's just about practice, 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 so that when we get to an Olympic Games, yes, it's the Olympic Games, and everyone knows that, it's like climbing Mount Everest to get there, and the Olympic Games is at the peak of the summit. But the practice and the repetition that the athletes get in all these other races through the 4-year cycle, some of these guys have been competing for 10, 12 years, swimming competitively for 20 years. All of that is practice and rehearsal, so that when they get there on the big day, they're as comfortable as possible with a very high pressure environment. And they take that comfort and confidence in the work and practice that they've done into those races to know that they're able to execute in that environment.
Can you talk a little bit about the pressure and how you handle pressure? Because I always struggle with that, either with, a big test at university or a big interview or, a presentation on stage. How do you handle that pressure, especially at the Olympics? You're trying not to freak yourself out, but, how do you handle that pressure?
Yeah, pressure, everyone experiences pressure. And one thing about pressure and nerves is that most of the time it's a physiological response of the body because of an environment or a scenario that's occurring. And the way that you would experience pressure or nerves and the feelings that you have when you go through those job interviews or, when you've got important deadlines to meet is exactly the same as what the athletes are feeling when they're standing on those blocks. It's no different to what anyone else is feeling. But it's about learning how to manage those feelings and understanding that there's a biological reason that you're feeling that way, and how to manage those feelings. So they do a lot of work with sports psychologists, physiologists, nutritionists. They've got a big team around them. Their coaches are really critical in that as well. And then, as I said, practicing all the time and having those rehearsals and racing at world championships is around when they practice those processes. So for every athlete, it's really individualized. Some athletes like things like mindfulness. Some will use breathing processes that they go through. Some use visualization. It's really depends on the individual, but they'll work out what works best for them in all of those different meets in the lead up, so that when they get to an Olympic Games, they know what works for them and they're able to use those skills that they've been taught and that they've learned and practice on the big day.
That's so interesting. I love that. I love how you say it's a very individual thing. I did read that the Australian Olympic team, the Olympic swimmers, they train in squads, but now they're training more individually. Does that make a difference as well?
Yeah, so they're still training in squads, but what's happening now is we're individualizing their training programs to the specific athletes. So they'll still train in a squad anywhere between sort of 6 to 20 athletes, roughly, in a squad, but they'll be getting individualized training sets or sessions that are specific to the needs of that athlete. So Yeah, I think it's really important for them to have training partners in their training squads so that they've got, they can be challenged in different ways. They get used to swimming in a lane with different people, because when you go to these international competitions, you're going to be in a warm-up pool, and there could be, anywhere between 30 to 40, maybe even 50 people warming up in the same lanes in the same pool as you. So it's good to have people around you in your training environment, and your peers in your training environment will challenge you. Some will be better at speed type sets, and some might be better at a more aerobics type of training. And so wherever your strengths and weaknesses are, your training partners might have strengths and weaknesses in different areas, and they can challenge you to be better in those areas. So all of our swimmers train in training squads, but what we're trying to do now is individualize the specifics of the training, so that we're working on developing for each individual athlete.
Yeah, fascinating. That's so good because, in a work environment, say, you can either work individually or you work in teams. So it's great to hear that you can work in a team that is good for maybe specific skills, and then you work with somebody else who's better at another skill, so you can improve together.
Yeah, and then they're always, we're really encouraging the athletes, to focus on themselves. So they're learning that skill set while there's a lot of people around them doing a lot of things. They're focusing on themselves and what they need to improve as an individual. And it's about developing their own process for performance. And they have to understand that process, what works best for them, so that they can get the best out of themselves.
Yeah, amazing. So I want to talk about technology, and the US has 340 million people and China has 1.4 billion people. Australia has a population of 26 million people, and yet if you look at our swimming records, we're 100% punching above our weight in terms of the medals that we're winning and how successful we are in the pool. I'd like to ask you, does technology play a part in us staying ahead of the competition?
I might be biased, but absolutely. Yeah, I really do think it does. Australia's leading the way in tech, and using that to support our coaches and athletes in sport. Back in, I think it was 1982, the Australian government, we didn't have a great Olympics, and that's when the Australian government developed the Australian Institute of Sport. And that's actually where all of our sports science, that's the founding, place, the birthplace of sports science in Australia. And so from the Australian Institute of Sport is where we really started to learn how to get the most out of research and sports science. But the critical piece that what Australians are really good and really able to do is our Australian coaches are able to apply the technology and apply research to the athletes. So they're really using the information that's around them and working out a way to apply that, not in a structured, rigid, university scientific type of model, but in a way that's going to best enhance and enrich the athlete's training environment or competition performance, wherever they might be introducing that technology or data. But that's one thing our coaches are really good at, is learning how to, stay abreast of the latest information, the latest technology and data, and how to implement and apply that in the training and competition environments.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. As you say, I think there's only so much of a human talent, but then you need all these science and technology to help you become better and shave, milliseconds and, run faster, etc., or swim faster in this case.
Maybe it is because Australia is, we see ourselves as a sporting nation. But I think, one of the fantastic things about Australia as well is the investment that goes in to technology and innovation in sport. There's government investment in it. There's private business investment. We have a lot of partners at Swimming Australia. As I've mentioned, like AWS is a partner of ours, that's really helping us drive innovation and stay ahead of the game. Sometimes I talk about technology in sport, and I always say it's our race. It's like our version of our race to the moon. Who's going to get there first? Who's going to have that competitive advantage when we get to the competition? And as I said, organizations like AWS are allowing us to innovate and develop technology in a really fast pace, the same pace that international sport moves at. We've just signed a partnership with Channel 9 for the next 10 years. And so we're looking around how can we use technology and data to enhance broadcast and fan engagement. So it really is a team effort. When we come to, Australia staying ahead of the game as far as technology and innovation in sport.
Yeah, fascinating. So it's great that you've got all these partners, because I don't think, a single sport or single sporting governing body can just do it by themselves. Like, you need to bring other people on board and get the fans in there to support the sport. So, it becomes bigger and more popular, etc. I'd love to hear about some of these innovations. So, you were like, how often do athletes swim per day or per week? And like, I know that most of the time is spent training, right? Not in competition, but most of the time is spent training. Can you let us know some of the innovations that is happening during training sessions?
Yeah, so on average, swimmers are swimming anywhere between roughly 6 to 10 sessions a week. Some of our really specific sprinters, like a Cameron McAvoy, might be only swimming sort of 4 sessions a week, but he's swimming the 50 meters, so that's really specific to his event. But on average, swimmers, as I said, will be swimming between sort of 6, 7 to 9 to 10 sessions a week in the water, and then they'll have 3 gym sessions, and then they might have some other supplementary sessions around that as well. It might be like a yoga session or Pilates. They'll have physio appointments and nutrition appointments, sports psychology. So they're very busy through the week in what they're doing, moving around and getting all the support that they need.
It's definitely a full-time job. That's a lot of sessions. And how long's the session?
Generally about 2 hours in the water.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
2 hours. Sometimes a more distancey type set can push to the sort of 2.5, 2 3/4. But generally they're in the water for about 2 hours, twice a day. Yeah.
Wow. I get all pruny. How do you not get pruny in the water after 4 hours in the pool?
They're very normal people. They get pruny as well.
Oh, do they? Just super athletes, I think.
There's no super trick to avoiding the prune.
So can you tell us more about the technology and training? Because I'm assuming that there must be a lot that's been used to kind of, how do you shave off time, basically? I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's something that we're looking really closely at the moment is the technology and training. The competition environment is quite structured. Obviously, you've got 8 lanes, so 8 swimmers, 1 person per lane, and they're all swimming the same distance and stroke. Training is a really chaotic environment. Like I said, you could have anywhere between 6 to 20 swimmers in the water all at once, and they're swimming different types of training sessions. They're doing drills and skills that are individualized to them, and they're all swimming different strokes. In one lane, you could have a freestyler, a butterflyer, and a backstroker all swimming. So it's a really chaotic environment for us to take information from. One of the things we're trying to develop at the moment is a computer vision system using a single camera that will then be able to decipher that picture, how many athletes are in the water, and what are the metrics that we can get from that around whether it might be the stroke count, the breath count, distance per stroke, skill times. So in the skills, we consider that the start, the turn, and the finish of the race. All of those metrics, the velocities that those swimmers are swimming at, where might be there a velocity drop-off due to fatigue. They're some of the things that we're trying to understand when and where they're occurring in training sessions. And so we're working on a system at the moment to use computer vision to be able to retrieve that data out of a training set. But in training, you are able to wear wearables, where in a competition, you're not able to wear wearables. So athletes will be wearing Apple Watches, are quite common to measure things like heart rate. The Apple Watch actually is really good at measuring distance swum as well. So you'll often see some of the athletes wearing Apple Watches so that they can track and monitor their heart rates through the training sessions. Sometimes they might use IMUs, which is a inertial sensor that they'll put on that can measure velocity as well. So there's a lot of different technology, and they have training tools that they can use as well. A lot of different technology in the training environment, but definitely the computer vision is something that we're trying to implement at the moment in the lead up to LA.
Wow. Can you explain what you mean by computer vision? I think a lot of people don't know what it means, one. And two, how do you use it in swimming?
Yeah, so the computer vision, we're using cloud compute. Essentially, we'll have a camera that sits in the grandstand or up high above the pool, and we'll capture the whole pool in with one camera, hopefully. And then we'll use a computer software system that uses machine learning and AI, and with the computer vision is able to take that video feed. It can identify the swimmers in the pool and then track their movement in the pool and identify what type of movement they're doing in the pool. So it'll be able to identify what stroke they're doing, how fast they're moving, all those types of things, which means for us using computer vision, it's a lot more adaptable and flexible option for us rather than everyone having to wear a wearable. We can have one camera that can collect the information on everyone in the pool. Also, the pool environment, being the water and the chlorine, is quite a what's the word? Corrosive environment. And so if we've got a lot of hardware around there, it doesn't have a lot of lifespan. So the more we can minimize the hardware that we have, that also makes it a really viable option for us in that environment.
Yeah, I can imagine it being a chaotic environment. I didn't know that. I thought all the freestylers will be training together, or like, all the backstrokers, rather than everyone's in, different mixed together. So maybe if you think about the hardware, you need to have maybe a glass bottom pool or something, and then you can have the cameras on the outside and then they can look in. But I don't know how you'll solve the middle bit, but all the swimmers in the middle, they'll be good for the ones on the outside.
Yeah.
Don't they have that in kind of like in all those aquariums and James Bond films and, aquariums, etc.? So
yeah. Put them in a fishbowl.
Yeah. That's so interesting about computer vision. I think that's really fascinating. So a lot of it is all cameras. Do you use a lot of sensors as well, like inside the pool, besides the Apple Watch?
Yeah, it depends on the program. Some programs do, some don't. Athletes don't tend to like to wear a lot of devices because swimming's an extremely technical sport and they're very sensitive to feel in the water. And so they want to feel the same way they're going to feel when they race. As I said, there are regulations. They're not allowed to wear sensors when they're racing. And so often they don't want to wear sensors or a lot of sensors. So sometimes we'll only wear sensors when we're doing a specific testing type session, where there's sort of some structure and rigor around a specific set. It's been repeated under certain conditions and we're looking for a specific outcome from that testing set. But it probably really comes down to the individual. Plus with some wearables, a lot of wearables, obviously a watch is different. That's quite fixed and stable and easy to wear. But as I mentioned before, the inertia sensors, the IMUs, it's hard to stick them to the body. We have a lot of trouble sticking on any other sort of sensor because of the water. So we can't glue it on, we can't sticky tape it on because they'll just fall off in the water. So that's definitely a challenge that we have as being an aquatic sport.
Really interesting. What about inside the swimming caps or something like that?
Yeah, sometimes they'll wear like a heart rate monitor inside the cap, definitely.
Because that would not, if it's inside the cap maybe, then it's less drag, like that will be affected, I'm assuming.
The heart rate monitor though, it can't sit in the hair because the sensor can't read through the hair. So you kind of got to sit it in a specific spot, like on the temple, And then you've got the water and the cap. So it can get a little bit finicky sometimes.
Got it. Okay. Well, that's a solution to maybe solve,
Yeah.
later on. Maybe a startup can come up with something. That'll be exciting.
Yeah.
So a big race day is looming. So we've done the training, the World Aquatics Championship or the Commonwealth Games that you mentioned. And I've also heard that you used to use 42 tab spreadsheet to collect all your data. Is that crazy? Can you tell us more about how technology has or innovations has also helped you when it comes to race day and in
Yeah.
competition?
Yeah, definitely. We use a lot of technology and data in racing, but it's not actually in the pool or on the swimmers. Again, we're using computer vision. We're using retrospective data. So the famous 42 tab spreadsheet, which has become quite famous,
Quite famous.
yeah, was the spreadsheet that we used to use to help us understand our relay teams and what was the best relay strategy to use on the day when we're in competition. So we used to go through all these different websites looking for racing results. And so the spreadsheet was all the different race results over the 4 years so that we could see if there were any trends in performances from our competitors and so it would then make suggestions for us in ways to swim, strategies and ways to swim. Now we've got an web app called the Relay app, not so creative in the name, but the Relay app is what we use, and that's able to scrape web data, pull all those race results together retrospectively over that Olympic cycle, and then it uses an algorithm that was designed by the guys at AWS to give us some possible and probable teams, suggesting and predicting which way and which order we should swim our relay team in, and then it will give us some suggestions around which way our international competitors may swim their teams. At the end of the day, the coach still has to make the coaching decision, and that will never change. This data and information is just there to support their decision making, to make sure that they're making the best possible decision for the team. The other big piece of technology that we use in a race environment is our race analysis system called Sparta, we call it. And
like the Greek warriors.
Yeah. And it uses a footage from a 4K camera, similar to what I was talking about in the training pool. We'll have one camera that will capture the whole pool, and then we'll use computer vision and some algorithms to track the swimmers up and down the pool, measuring their things like, velocity, stroke rate, distance per stroke, skills times, time segments throughout the race.
Wow, fascinating. So many things. So I love how you're using innovation and technology to kind of like make your work more easier for you, like more productive, like rather than needing to go find this information yourself and scrape all this information manually. Then you are, a researcher rather than, this tool is now scraping it for you from an automated perspective by the sounds of it, which sounds a lot easier for you. Then it just presents in a chart. Then if somebody is unwell, say, like if they say, okay, we think that you should put these 4 different combinations into the relay team. If someone is unwell on the day of, then can you change it easily or
we can manipulate the data and say, well, these are the parameters that we have to work with. We only have these 4 athletes, this one's 6, so we can pull them out. But that's where the coach plays a critical role, because obviously the computer doesn't know if someone's sick. So it's really important that the coach is across what's happening, because the coach would have to use that data and their intel and insight around the sick athlete to then we can change the information. Similar to also, like I often say to coaches, the computer can't tell us if someone's really nervous as well. So, and they're not dealing with the pressure very well. And so the coach has to make a coaching decision then. If we've got quite a nervous athlete, probably perhaps putting them up on that first position to lead the whole relay team off, maybe isn't the best position to swim them in.
Yeah, interesting. So human coaches are not going to be replaced by an AI
No,
tool.
no, never, never.
No, I don't think so. And how like talking about Sparta, how long does it take to, and analyze like, the whole race and, is that a very long process? I'm always interested, like, whether you win or lose, you should always be reflecting on how you did. What does that process look like? How do you improve for next time? I'd love to hear what, coaches say.
So the first race analysis system dates back to, I think, around about the 80s. And now it's been evolved over time. We've had a number of different iterations. And now, as I said, where we're at is Sparta. Sparta can turn a race analysis around in about 15 minutes for a 100-meter race. A 1,500-meter race would take a little bit longer. But to give you a bit of perspective, the 100-meter race, back when it was the original system, probably would have taken a few hours to do, and a 1,500 definitely would have taken a number of hours to analyze. So the process has sped up significantly, and the advantage to having a much faster, efficient system, the accuracy is improved. We're removing human error from the process, but also having the speed of data. Then the sooner we get it into the hands of the coaches, the more time we're allowing them and giving them to make the decision. Can you imagine if I gave you a race analysis and all your race data 5 minutes before you're about to race your Olympic final? But if I give it to you the night before, you're able to process it, make up a plan, how you're going to approach the race, settle with that, and then you're much calmer. You know what's happening. You can prepare in a, I guess, a more calm environment. So the sooner we get that information and data, the coaches and athletes, the more time we're allowing them to make the decision and then prepare for the event.
Right. So it's all about like control, basically. So you've got control over your preparation by the sounds of it.
Yeah, definitely. You want to control what you can control. There's always a lot of things you can't control.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but that's the thing we always say to the athletes: control the controllables.
Okay. Fascinating. No, it's great. Because like, I play tennis, so I'm a tennis player, but there's things you can't control in tennis. You can't control the sun, you can't control the wind, you can't control the weather, you can't control the state of the court, say, if it's outdoors. And whereas swimming is probably a little bit more controlled because it's indoors. And, it's 8 lanes and there's those variables that doesn't change, but you can't control your mind. You can't control your confidence. You can't control, those type of negative thoughts, say. Interesting. So I'd love to talk about the Olympics because, I'm a huge Olympics fan. I have to say, I went to the Sydney Olympics in 2000. It's my hometown Olympics. I was not going to miss it for the world. And I used to work at the Olympics hotel, the Novotel. And as a trivia fact, it was the first ever hotel ever built on an Olympic site. I'm still waiting for trivia to ever come up. I'll know that answer, but because I worked in it. And Michael Klim, one of our famous Aussie swimmers, was staying there. So I got to meet him during the Olympics. That was amazing. And I was in London, for 2012 and very lucky in the sense of I knew someone who was sick and couldn't go. And so I ended up getting the tickets and I went to the swimming in London at 2012. So I was really, these are moments that, you always remember for the rest of your life. So I'd say that that's probably my Olympic standout moments. I've been to 2 Olympics. I was hoping to go to Tokyo. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, I couldn't go. Would have loved to go to Paris, but, maybe we'll get to LA. I'd love to go to LA. But, Jess, you've been to 5 Olympics. Is there an Olympic standout moment for you as well?
Every Olympics is really different, and I think I have a standout moment from every Olympics. Paris was amazing to see the Eiffel Tower there and to see our open water swimmers swim in the River Seine. That was really cool.
Did anyone get ill?
No one got ill, but it was really significant for the Australian swimming team because the River Seine is where Freddie Lane won Australia's first medal in swimming, in Olympic
Yeah.
swimming, was in the River Seine. So
Yeah. It was 1900 or something like that,
yeah,
wasn't it? Yeah.
1900. I think it was the 200-meter freestyle they had the 200-meter freestyle in the River Seine. So
Yeah.
that was an amazing, surreal experience to have last year, was to see the modern day swimmers again swimming in the River Seine. That was
Yeah.
amazing to see.
Incredible.
Tokyo, had its own challenges. And I think, just amazing to see everyone back together again. And I think it gave the whole world a glimmer of hope.
Mm.
Seeing the Olympics, being able to happen was a really good sign we were coming through the pandemic.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think every Olympics, is really special. Definitely the relays hold a special place in my heart. I do a lot of work with our relay teams, and in swimming it is an individual sport, but it's always special when the swimmers, they always love coming together and getting to compete as a team. And we've got a really rich history in the relays of performing really well.
Yeah, nice. That's so good. So, we did so well in Paris. 18 medals, 7 gold, 10 silvers, 3 bronzes. I'm so proud of our golden girls, I have to say. Can you tell me what's it like living in the Olympics? Like, I'm only going as a fan, but you've been to 5 Olympics. What's the goss?
There's always a lot of goss in the village from
Yeah.
all countries, not just the Australian country. It's a melting pot, to be honest, of the United Nations. Every country is represented in there. Th- you're eating together, you're living together, you're in elevators together. You love seeing the big names. Rafa Nadal is always one to stay in the
Oh,
village. He never stays out in a hotel. So you see
have you met
you'll
him?
walk.
If you have met him, I'm so
Yeah,
jealous.
yeah,
Oh,
I've met Rafa. Um, the dream team, the American basketball team,
yeah.
you'll
Wow.
wake up in the morning and you're half asleep and you wander on downstairs to get a coffee and you'll see the American dream team walking down the street. So
Wow.
those things are
They
really
stand out. They're all very tall.
yeah. Yeah. And then you see, like the gymnasts, and they're very, very small. So
Oh,
it's amazing
amazing.
seeing all the different athletes and the superstars. And no matter whether they come from, a smaller sport like table tennis or diving, or yeah, it's the dream team. Everyone's in that environment, living and experiencing the same things. You would have heard a lot about the cardboard beds.
Yes.
Every, everyone's sleeping
Were
on the
they comfortable?
they're not as bad as what everyone makes out. They're not that bad. The only
Okay.
problem is they are cardboard. So if you accidentally spill your water bottle, or leave your wet togs and towel on the floor, they can get soggy.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Of course, that makes sense too.
Yeah, they need to stay dry. But if you can keep your bed dry, then it's absolutely fine.
Oh, fantastic. Have you ever been starstruck? Was there someone that you met in the Olympic Village and you go, oh my God, I'm so
Ooh.
starstruck?
Um, Yeah, Michael Johnson, the 400-meter American
Oh,
runner. I was pretty
yeah.
starstruck. Yeah, like by him, I was, whoa. Yeah, I mean, Rafa Nadal, Roger Federer, those guys, it's really cool to see
Stop
them.
this. I'm so jealous.
But you've got to play it real,
You
they
have to play
cop
it
a,
cool. How do you be cool around them? It's
yeah,
impossible.
you got to play it cool. And, they do, a lot of people come up and ask them for photos and autographs and those sort of things, even in the village. So you sort of try and leave them alone and give them a bit of space. But, yeah, it's cool to see those guys. They're the best at what they do. And, they're just fantastic ambassadors for their country and their sport. So it's always good to see those guys living in the village with everyone else.
Yeah, amazing. That sounds great. Or maybe hopefully one day I can get there. So, the Dolphins, which is our Australian swimming team, I love how there's different animals for all our different teams. Really consolidates swimming as Australia's most rewarding sport at the Olympics. And I actually read this stat that the swimming accounts for over 2/3 of all Australian medals won at the Olympics, which is insane. The Olympics Summer Games to date, I will say that. So I'd love to ask you, Jess, like, why do you think Australia is so dominant in the pool?
We're a nation of swimmers. We live on an island. We're surrounded by water. We say swimming's a lifestyle sport as well. You can swim at all age. It's part of the Australian curriculum at school. You have to learn to swim. In saying that, my youngest brother, he lives on a cattle station in the Northern Territory. So he lives very, very, very far from the coast, and his kids out there, they're swimming in the dams. So I think it's just something about our culture and our people. We like to be in the water. We like to be surrounded by the water. And I think the dolphins has such a rich history, and people want to be a part of that. And young kids have been fortunate enough to be able to see the dolphins swim. They see them on TV, and they see these idols and are amazed at what they do. And they will dream. They have great big dreams, and they want to be like them when they grow up. And it's so fantastic when they do get on to the Australian team, and they're recounting those stories of when they were growing up and the first time they saw one of the Australian swimming team, or whatever their first memory or connection to the Australian swimming team was, and how they're now living that dream themselves is so fantastic to be able to see and hear those stories. And I think that's part of what the Australian public embraces. Right back from John Hendricks was probably one of the first athletes to shave down, shave the hair off his body when he was swimming. And, we've got Ian Thorpe with the fast suit. Everyone's got these moments in times and these memories. Dawn Fraser winning 3 Olympic gold medals in the 100-meter freestyle, never been done before or replicated. Everyone, I think, in Australia has got a connection or a memorable moment with the Australian swimming team.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. They're so aspirational, and they're just fantastic role models. Like, they're dominant, but they're also they seem to me like incredible athletes, who are quite accessible too. But I think, I think about this, like, why is Australia so good at swimming? And I think, one, the weather, because, we've got great sunshine. But secondly, I think because I think swimming's a fairly accessible sport. Like, you talk about your younger brother living in the middle of, the outback, but, it has a dam which has water, and therefore you can swim. So,
Yeah.
and that's why I think swimming is such a, as you say, lifestyle accessible sport. Unlike golf, say, or F1, which,
Yeah.
you need lots and lots of money to get into those sports, even tennis, So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, and I think, the weather helps, and how water is so accessible definitely helps too.
Yeah.
And yeah, having great role models. Like, I grew up in Australia. Everybody knows a famous swimmer. Like, you can't leave this, like, you can't be in this country without knowing a famous swimmer. They're
Yeah.
seen as rock stars here, as our idols. So I think it's
Yeah.
great.
And I
Yeah.
think too, because we are surrounded by so much water in Australia, water safety is really important in Australia.
Mm,
So we're
mm,
teaching our young kids to swim as a life skill, so that they
yeah.
can be safe around the water as well, which is, some of these, kids that grow up and end up on the Australian swimming team. You ask them, like, how did you get into swimming? It was like, oh, we had a backyard pool and our parents wanted us to be safe around the water. So we learnt to swim, and it
Yeah.
evolved from there. So, I think that's something that's unique to Australia as well, as, our focus and attention on water safety, is really important because, to keep our kids safe.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's great. So I'm just gonna change it away from the Olympics a bit. Otherwise I'll talk about forever.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I want to talk more about I'll talk about the technology in the Olympics, sorry. So, can you like, prior to Tokyo and probably Paris, what's the difference between the uses of all this emerging technologies before and after? Because I know that, you've got all this now cool innovations that's really happening in the last 2 games. But prior to that, can you see a big difference in terms of your role, and also with the athletes?
Yeah, I think what's been a really big shift in the technology has definitely been cloud computing, particularly in the last decade. We're seeing that being utilized a lot more with the data analytics of sport, which gives us those deep insights into performance. And then that's the cloud computing has enabled us also to speed up and get efficiencies that we've talked about today, the speed in which we can do race analysis. And we definitely have seen a big shift in that, from Tokyo, from the Tokyo Olympics and again in Paris, and we'll probably see another big shift again towards LA and Brisbane. For us specifically at Swimming Australia, it was definitely the partnership with AWS that accelerated our journey with data and with cloud computing. The resources, the education that they gave us around how to utilize it, how to embed it, how to support us with how to get behavior change, even in how do you get people to use this new technology and help it become part of the daily process that they use, whether that be in training or competition. So we're definitely seeing that. Technology is getting cheaper too now. It's getting more affordable. There's not particularly in Olympic sport, is government funded. We do have some partners, but it's definitely not like the money that you see going into professional sports like the Formula One and the NFL. But technology and cloud computing becoming much more affordable. So we're able to start to integrate it more, and innovate more with it because it's become affordable and accessible for us as well.
Yeah, fantastic. So it sounds like there's a lot of changes. And do you see a lot more of the performance analytics continuing to evolve as you get to LA 28?
Yeah, I think every time we sort of, working on a project, we're always looking at the art of the possible. So it's like, what can we achieve now? How is this going to have impact now? How is this going to have impact in 4 years? And then we always ask us almost like that what if question. What if, we could do this and this, and then the end result is so much higher and greater, and getting that blue sky thinking, which we like to call the art of the possible, which is a term, again, we adopted through the work that we did with AWS. And so it's about managing, sometimes it's a bit of a balance of like being realistic around like what can we achieve and what we can do. But, we're super competitive and we want to be the best in the world. So we're always trying to find things that are going to give us that competitive edge and things that other people maybe might not be doing. So it's a bit of a balance between that. But at the end of the day too, we got to remember we're working with humans. That's the most important thing to us. Remember that these athletes are people at the end of the day. And so it's important when we are working with technology and data, that it's secure. And that's really enriching their experience in professional support.
Yeah. Well, you're not working with robots. They do have to eat, rest, and sleep, even though you probably want to be like, no, you have to keep swimming.
Yeah, and they don't want to be poked and prodded and treated like, so it's important to remember that.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned data. So that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you as well. It's like, well, there's, as you were saying, that some of the athletes wear wearables and things like that. But how does Swimming Australia also ensure athletes' privacy and consent? Because, data privacy is such a big issue at the moment, or hot topic at the moment.
Yeah, it is. And it's really important for us that stays at the forefront of our minds and processes and systems when we're doing anything, whether we're handling individual athlete data, looking at de-identifying data, making sure that we're, treating that data with sensitivity and respect, and making sure that we're, compliant with regulations and policies. And we have all of those in place at Swimming Australia, and we educate all of the staff that are working with our athletes and around our athletes, around our policies in data safety and protection for our athletes. And that's really, again, it's really important thing to remember that the athletes, own their information. And it's also about educating them about what happens, where does their data go and what happens to it so that they're aware and in control of the process.
Yeah. It's a huge deal, I feel, at the moment. And, I think pretty sure do you have to track everything, like what everyone eats, when they sleep? I'm assuming, like, I'm just watching Severance at the moment. Is there like an innie outie? Do you turn yourself off, like, as a professional athlete, or do you know everything,
Some athletes like to do that. Some are really like numbers driven and data driven. So those athletes, like to monitor a lot more. Some athletes, don't want to know anything.
Really?
They're much more organic, and intuitive around the way they go about things. And they just say, tell me what I need to know and I'll do it, So it really depends on the individual. Some like a lot of data, as I said, they're just like any normal human. As I said, some people are really good with numbers. Some are better with pictures. Some are better hearing instructions. So it's about knowing those individuals that you're working with, and understanding how they best interact with information.
Yeah, no, interesting. So, we're coming towards the end, but I want to ask you about your leadership skills, because I'm going to toot your horn a little bit, because in 2023, the Australian Institute of Sport Performance Awards, you won the leadership awards against all the other leaders in every single other sport, which is incredible. And then in 2024, you were named in the Australian Sports Technology Network's Game Changers Power 100 list. Goodness, Jess, like, clearly you're a leader in the sport. Can you tell us more about your leadership, but also your leadership principles? Like, how do you work, or how do you how do you be more effective in a high performance sports environment?
Yeah, I really pride myself on being a leader who's authentic first and foremost. I don't try to be something I'm not or someone that I'm not. I think really being an authentic person helps you build those relationships, professional relationships with the people that you're working with. And so that's probably the most important thing to me, making sure I'm authentic and have integrity in the way that I'm working. I try to be empathetic as well and try and understand the people that I'm working with, and understand things from their point of view. And I try and be a really active listener around listening to what the suggestions that they might have. One of the interesting things that I've learned through some of the processes and ways of working is about trying to remove your own bias. And I think you really have to listen to be able to do that. You can't just hear things. You've got to be able to really listen to what people are saying, to try and remove your own bias from certain situations. And so, yeah, I think I've been really lucky to be, surrounded by, in sports, and some amazing people and amazing leaders who I try and learn from everyone that's around me, whether they're a leader or not. I think everyone has, different qualities, and I try and learn from the different people around me. And then probably more recently, as I've gone into this role, around in this GM role around, with innovation and working with more of our commercial partners, and definitely people at AWS like Louise Stigwood. She's super inspiring in the way that she leads her teams, and the way that she communicates, I think is, I try and take things from different people like that. Paul Devlin at AWS as well. A lot of those guys, I'm always, whenever I get around there, I'm always like ears and eyes wide open, trying to learn as much as I can, because they've been really successful in their careers, and I think they're really well respected people in what they do. And that's one of the things I hope at the end of the day is that, I just leave the sport in a better place than when I came along, is what I hope to do at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love how you've referenced other people, in terms of, your own leadership, because then you're looking at others and you say, okay, this is how I like to do it myself as well. But I'm pretty sure you are putting together a very high performing environment yourself. What do you think is the number one tip in terms of that culture? What's your number one tip in terms of how you can build that high performing culture, you think?
Yeah, for us at Swim in Australia, it starts with the strategy. We work on a philosophy of strategy, structure, people, is how we start to sort of shape what our teams look like and our direction. And then that's what our culture comes out of. Our head coach, Rowan Taylor, always says, culture is like a garden. You have to continually water it or it will start to die. And so it's a really great way of thinking about it. You've got to pay attention to it. And the people are what make up your culture and the behaviors and values. And so at Swimming Australia, our values, are courage, unity and excellence. And it's about how through our behaviors are we living those every day. And the watering that we do of the culture garden is talking about it regularly, whenever we're coming together as a team, giving shout outs when we see people living those behaviors, is all part of contributing to that culture.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that analogy, like watering the garden.
Yeah.
Obviously Swimming Australia, it's all about water, right? So
I never thought of it that way, but that's a good way to think about it too.
Yeah. What about, obviously this podcast is all about trying to increase more diverse perspective. I always think about how we can foster more pathways to more diverse and also female leaders in sports, and then what about young women who also wants to be in leadership roles, just like yourself, Jess? So what advice would you give to them?
Take every opportunity that comes along. Back in 2019, I'd actually applied 5 times before for similar sorts of things and had never got through. And I was sort of getting a little bit disheartened. And anyway, on the 5th attempt, I got accepted into this leadership course at the Australian Institute of Sport, which was a women in STEM, leadership workshop. And it went over a year. There were 20 women involved in it, from different sports, different disciplines. There were, sports physicians, physios, biomechanists, physiologists, from all different sports, around Australia. And, it was a fantastic course that really opened my eyes, to leadership and different areas of leadership, and made me, I guess, reflect on myself and my own type of leadership, and helped me form some of my values around what type of leader I wanted to be. And, probably something that I wasn't aware of going into the course, but something that I got out of the course was an amazing network of, strong female leaders in Australian sport. And, we have a really great WhatsApp group. That was back in 2019. So what's that, 6-7 years ago now?
6 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. And, our WhatsApp group is still going strong. There's, messages pinging off on it, every week. We try and have an annual catch up still. And that group of women has become a really great support network for me, and I think for each other. We're often, asking each other for advice, or sharing job opportunities that occur. Like, it might be anything. We also love to catch up, just even socially, and see how each other are going in our lives outside of our jobs. And I think so. My 2 pieces of advice would be, like, take every opportunity that comes along, and start to create a network of great female leaders around you.
Yeah, no, I love that. And your persistence. 5 times you're trying to enter this program. That should be number 3 on even number 1,
Be persistent. Yeah,
I love that.
Be persistent and keep turning up.
Yeah, because it will happen. I feel like, they'll even to just shut you up, they'll say yes, so.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love how you're still with that group and you found that network to be able to ask each other questions. I think it's so important. I feel a lot of people feel quite lonely in what they do, and perhaps that's also why they find it difficult. It's a challenge, and either that, they don't continue anymore, they'll leave the industry, or, whatever. But I'm so glad to hear that. So that's really fantastic. I'd love to hear your what are you excited about in terms of all this new cool technologies that's coming out, but especially for swimming. And, we've got Brisbane in 2032. What do you think is going to happen there?
Yeah, so I have heard on the grapevine, don't quote me on this, but that the Brisbane Games potentially are going to be called the Tech Games, which is super exciting, obviously, for someone like myself, to see what kind of technology is developed for the Brisbane Games, and that it's going to be showcased there at the Brisbane Games is fantastic. Where I'm really excited about is not just the performance data and the technology and innovation that occurs around performance, but how we can start leveraging that for fan engagement. So it's not just about the tech and the data for the athletes and coaches, but the tech and the data, that we can connect the fan with, and find different ways for them to engage with the sport, engage with the athletes, understand the sport of swimming. As we've talked about today, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes. There's a lot that goes into a single race, whether that be 50 meters or 1500 meters. So, using tech and data and information broadcasts, to give them deeper insights, into the athletes and into the performances of the Olympic Games, I think is going to be super exciting.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the fan engagement's going to be a big piece coming up, because the rest of us, like, we're all very passionate about sport, and I think one thing I've always loved to know more about is like going behind the scenes. Like, so I'm asking questions like, oh, how do they train? I didn't ask them about what they eat, but what was the Olympic Village like? Because the rest of us are interested in it, So it's kind of like getting that insight. I'm not saying being stalkerish, but, kind of getting more insights about what's it like being an athlete. Cause like, it's such yeah, I mean, there's so many of us. Like they are, I think, athletes. I put athletes up on a bit of a pedestal, I have to say, because I find it incredible what they do. So, and
No,
that's
it
why I do
is.
that.
It
Yeah.
is it is really amazing what they do, and their persistence, is absolutely inspiring. They don't become an Olympic athlete overnight. These guys and girls are training, for 10, 20 years to become an Olympic athlete, and a lot of detail, and a lot of support around them to make that happen. And, it is unique, and there's fantastic stories of tenacity and grit, that can really inspire people in their everyday lives, to do all sorts of different things. I think that's the fantastic thing about sport. Everyone can, take something away from it, engage with it in different ways, and yeah, use that inspiration in their everyday life.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And sacrifice as well. Like, I love my wines and I love my potato chips and, chocolate. I can't have any of that if I want to
I
be
would say
an
it's
Olympic
so
athlete.
their self discipline,
Oh, so
is
much.
very good.
Yeah, no, incredible. So, fun question to finish. Look, I'm a bit of a land creature. I'm not a very good swimmer. You work at Swimming Australia. What's the number one tip to become a better swimmer?
Persistence. You just got to keep,
Persistence.
yeah, you just got to keep trying. Just keep going. Don't give up. The more you're consistent with it, the easier it'll get. So yeah, persistence would be my number one tip. Probably my second one, like if you want a technical tip, your body position in the water, you want to try and stay, pretty flat level with the water. If your legs are sinking, you're creating a lot of drag and making it a lot harder to pull yourself through the water. So your body position in the water, and be persistent with your training. Stick at it.
That's a really good tip, because I feel like when I'm trying to swim, I'm like, I think my legs are probably like flopping all over the place and the arm's not sure what to do either.
Yeah.
So you want to be still and level with the water as much as possible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I might have to get all the help I can get. I have to wear my wearable in there. I have to put on my full body suit,
Yeah. Some fins, some flippers to keep your legs up.
Well, so if other people want to contact you, Jess, what's the best way?
Probably LinkedIn is the best way. My email address is on there. I'm always replying to messages on LinkedIn. Yeah, happy to reach out. If anyone that reaches out to you, get in touch and I'll get back to you.
I'm pretty sure you're going to be inundated now because, you're super fascinating and everybody is going to want a pass to the Brisbane Olympics, including me. So, I'd love to do another episode for closer to the Olympics and see what other innovations you're up to, because I think Swimming Australia is so innovative and constantly changing. So it's quite exciting.
Hopefully we can keep innovating at the same pace that we have and, doing Australia proud. I think that's, something we really pride ourselves on is, competing for the nation. And I know the swimmers are also proud to wear the green and gold and represent all the Australians out there.
I see, this is what I love about sports. It's so passionate, but it's also very patriotic as well. I love the Olympics for that reason too. And I love that you are my first guest sitting in a car. So I'm going to call this podcast carpool interviewing or something like that. But thank you so much, Jess, for your time and for joining us on Emerging Tech Unpacked. I really loved learning all about all this new innovations in swimming. Your fascinating Olympic insights, because I'm such a sports fan. I'm such a big sports tech fan. So it's been fantastic to learn more about that. And, your career as a leader in the sport, which I think is, all the applause to you for being a great leader there. So thank you so much for your time, Jess, and thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Lucy. Thanks for having me. I really enjoy getting the opportunity to share the story of the Dolphins and talking about the team behind the team as well. Everyone puts in a huge effort around the Dolphins, and we couldn't do it without everyone that's involved. So thanks for having me today.
Thank you. What a conversation about Olympic swimming technologies. What do you think about all the cool new tech in the pool? A huge thank you to Jess Corones for joining us and giving us such an incredible behind-the-scenes understanding about the world of Olympic swimming, cutting-edge technology, and what it takes to lead a high-performance team to success on the global stage. From fascinating innovations like computer vision and wearables to the inspiring stories of grit, resilience, and teamwork, I think we can all take something away from this conversation, whether you're an athlete, a tech enthusiast, or just someone who loves sports and the Olympics as much as I do. Jess, your insights into leadership, culture, and innovation are truly inspiring. And I have to say, I am still super jealous that you've met Rafael Nadal and seen the dream team in the Olympic Village. I can't wait for Brisbane 2032 to be hosted in our backyard. To everyone tuning in, if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your fellow sports and tech fans so they can enjoy it too. For more information about the latest episodes and how to contact us for sponsorship, promotion, and guest speaking collaborations, visit our website, emergingtechunpacked.com. We are available in audio format on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and you can also watch us on YouTube, and we have bonus video content there. Make sure to tap on the notification bell so you can be informed of the latest episode drops. We are active on social media, so make sure to subscribe, like, and follow us on our social media channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, to stay updated with the latest news and content. To get in contact with me, you can find me on LinkedIn by searching for Lucy Lin. We welcome all feedback and will be very grateful if you can help us grow and spread the word by forwarding this episode to a friend and giving us a 5-star review. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope I've unpacked Olympic swimming technologies for you to better understand this interesting field of sports tech. I'm Lucy Lin, and this has been the Emerging Tech Unpacked podcast. Until next time, keep dreaming big, innovating boldly, training hard, and cheering for our hard-working athletes. Thank you for listening to Emerging Tech Unpacked. See you in the next episode.